Hey you. Yeah, you. Do you like to exist? Do you like to make choices? Well, I've got bad news. Everything you will do has already happened and not happened. So really, your life doesn't matter. Sorry to break it to you. So really, you don't matter. So you know what this means. You gotta start gambling. You gotta start hitting yards, the $10 ones from the yard shop, because those are the best ones. You gotta start gooning more, and you gotta stay unemployed, man. Employment is a trap. We all know this. I'm just kidding, y'all. You gotta live your life to the fullest, because you do matter. Don't take, I didn't mean that. You do matter. However, what I've said is very similar to a lot of things in life. And what I mean by this is it majorly applies to media. Most stories are stories. They've got an end. What I'm basically trying to say is that stories are unchangeable. They've already happened. And maybe that's what the artist wanted, and we should respect that. Maybe what happened was the best ending. Most stories end, and you just kind of accept that. I don't know if I'm being very clear right now, but I found this quote from the novelization of Revenge of the Sith from all places, and it weirdly goes kind of hard, and I think it explains what I'm trying to say mainly.
This story happened a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It is already over. Nothing can be done to change it.
It's weirdly kind of depressing, but I really like that quote. And it helps me keep kind of grounded feel. Whenever I'm kind of sad or mad or disappointed at an ending of something, I usually just accept that it was the artist's interpretation. Is that true in a lot of cases? No, but it gives me kind of a grounded feel. So everything I just said about being creative and accepting ending, yeah, throw that out the window. That's not what we're talking about today, because we have to switch focus to video games. And I think we can all accept that video games are an art form at this point. They've been around long enough. They have a long history. I don't think it is a crazy opinion to say that video games are an art form. But the problem is our conventional way of telling stories is a lot harder to make within a video game. And that's because you, the person, are physically controlling it, and you are not the artist. When you watch a movie, it's usually what the artist wanted, and the shots are laid out the way they wanted, and it's edited in the way they wanted. But in video games, you can just run into a fucking corner for 10 hours. You can sit there staring at a rupee for 10 hours to phase through a fucking fence. Think about it like this for me. Movies, books, and TV shows are like pre-made meals. They are always the same, and some are gonna like it more than others. But down to its components, it is still the same thing. Video games are like giving a bunch of people different ingredients and telling them to cook the same thing. Yeah, the thing is probably gonna get cooked, but no doubt it's going to be cooked differently by each person. So this brings up an interesting question. Should video games adapt to this kind of free-form cooking style with their openness? Or should they maybe try to go the more traditional pre-made style, make it kind of feel the same for everybody? Well, by the title, I think you know what I believe, but I want to talk about why I really believe it. So when it comes to player choice, there's two major paths in games. There's the decision between giving a lot of player choice in gameplay and the decision to give a lot of player choice in story. And that's not to say that they're mutually exclusive, which we'll talk about later.
I was on my way to prison 3 months ago.
No shit.
No shit.
It wasn't for touching kids, was it?
Oh, man.
Let's first talk about player choice in story, which is not too complex because it's very hard to do right. So you see, what makes story games very hard to master this player choice is if you understand the very basic idea of the butterfly effect. And if you've never heard of the butterfly effect, it's basically this small concept that the smallest actions can change the world on a grand level. So a game where your choices specifically alter the world is very hard to do because the scope of the butterfly effect is so grand. It's the idea that literally the smallest thing could change history forever. So how do you put this idea of pretty much infinity into one game? You can't. But developers do try. In most games with a story, it's pretty set in stone, and maybe you get to choose a different ending at the end of the game. But that's not very grand freedom to me, because there are only 2 or 3 choices or whatever. It's usually just a last minute decision that you, the player, makes. So I guess it is player choice, but it's very restricting. So some games try to incorporate all your changes into something like the ending or ravel it into the rest of the story. Usually these are choose your own adventure games, similar to like the books of the same name. You know, you do a certain action and a certain outcome happens because of it. In these games, and I didn't majorly say this, gameplay takes a major backseat. The choices are completely driving the idea of these games. However, most of these games aren't good at actually having these choices direct the gameplay. And this usually happens because games kind of put on a false facade of, oh, your choices really do matter, when they really don't. And I'm gonna say, skip ahead a minute, because I have a rant that's been holding within me for, I think, years at this point. I need to talk about Telltale games. And I need to set one thing straight. Telltale did not, or do not, I don't really know, make in-depth choose your own adventure games. They appear like your choices matter when they really don't. You might save one character over another, but those characters don't have that much depth because they can't afford all the dialogue that would happen if they just kept them, so they end up killing them off later anyways. So your choices about saving that person really didn't matter because ultimately they got caught up in budget constraints. And I'm not trying to say these games can't be good. They've definitely got good games, but we need to stop as people pretending that these choices are like in depth in any way, because they just aren't. They don't fucking matter in the end. Like, none of your fucking choices matter in these games. They are pretty much fucking walking simulators where you walk around an area and you pick up items and then you make some choices that kind of affect the game, kind of when they really don't. And they're entirely relying on the story and they hope that the story is good. These games pretty much, if they do not have a good story, they're done. They're out. They're forgotten forever. Notice if you go through Telltale's whole catalog, we don't talk about all the fucking games that they made. We talk about like 3 of them because most of them are forgettable as shit because they're not good games. And let me roll back to choices mattering in these games again, because I have something I have to say. Spoilers for The Walking Dead Season 1. If you haven't played it, do go play it. It's one of their great games. The story is amazing, yada yada. You already know this. Okay, spoilers? 3, 2, 1. Okay, in the final chapter, after Lee is bitten, you can chop off your hand to hopefully stop the infection. And actually, I'm not gonna say probably, the game treats it like you are going to stop the infection. But I need to put big quotations around that, because guess what? He still fucking turns into a zombie whether you cut off his arm or not. Wow, that was really deep. I'm really like how my choices didn't matter, because guess what? If I had just not chopped off my arm, I would have still turned into a fucking zombie and I wouldn't have fucking turned. So like, what's the point at the end of the day? Why would I do that? It would have been really cool if maybe the infection did stop when he chopped off his arm. And because of that, maybe he gets shot when trying to save Clementine at the end, because now he has only one hand. He can't really overpower the dude as much. So you still get like the emotionally thematic ending. Maybe it's a little different and Clementine's talking to him because he's dying. He's still gonna die, and he dies no matter what. I guess you don't get the cool thing where Clem mercy kills him, but it's not like he can't mercy kill him. He can be like, I'm bleeding out, Clem, fucking shoot me, or something like that. Just make it so my choices matter. I don't know, just don't make it so he turns into a zombie regardless, because then why the fuck did you give me the option to try and stop the infection? I need to say something. David Cage does not make good games. In fact, I would say a lot of Telltale games are way better than David Cage games. They're actually written like coherent games with decent stories, and they're not usually directed by a fucking weirdo. But I will give him credit. He lets you kill those characters. If you fuck up a QTE, that dude can die. So Telltale, I'm just saying, if you don't want to fucking fail again, maybe make your fucking choices matter. Okay, I'm done. Story games where your choices matter are a rarity because it's really hard to make a flexible world that can change, and especially I think flexible characters are really important because your characters have to have personality, but there are, choices can also affect their life majorly, and it's really hard to do because at that point you just have to be an incredible writer. So these games require a lot of talent, and you still have to all kind of weave that into one coherent web that still relates to the story at hand. Well, I don't like David Cage. I do like that he does make his game so open. Well, Heavy Rain is not the best game. I do like how open it is. Ethan can just go, man, I don't want to cut off my fucking fingers. I hate my kid. And you can just let his kid die like that. Let him drown. And while Heavy Rain isn't good, the wide-ranging player choice really does make it a more amusing game, I'll say. I won't say better, but it definitely is fun. If it was the Heavy Rain story with the Heavy Rain acting and I just couldn't make that many choices, that game would be fucking terrible. But because I can alter the story severely, it makes the dumbass story and dumbass characters and dumbass fucking acting and shitty fucking director kind of funny. I think how a story game can captivate you is get you immersed in the world, especially you want to like feel like you connect with these characters. And a bad game just doesn't do that. You just don't usually connect to the characters or the world at all. You know you're playing a video game. So I think player choice helps kind of build that immersion back up. Even if the game isn't very good, you still feel like you are making choices that affect the world. And therefore that makes the game a little more fun in my opinion. So I need to set it straight. I do not like Heavy Rain or Beyond Two Souls, but the player choice within definitely makes them kind of funny bad games. So away from all this negativity, let's actually talk about a game that does this really well. A great choose your own adventure game, story game, video game, I don't know how you want me to say it, is Until Dawn, which has everything I mentioned before that makes a good choose your own adventure done right. Its choices actually matter and can severely alter the game to the point where if one person dies, another one can die later. The story is well developed, interesting, and it flows well with your choices. And the characters are varied, flexible, but they still have their own personality that you can connect to them with. It overall just flows a lot better than most story games do. And while the rest of Supermassive games are not amazing, the player choice is still good and makes those games funny bad usually. Except Man of Medan. That game just fucking sucks. So basically, story games are really hard to have a good player freedom in because it's hard to articulate all the ways the story can change. You need to have very strong writers to be able to make a coherent game out of player choices. But even if the core concept of the game is not amazing, those choices can make those games more fun, enjoyable, and immersing. And some games are really elevated even higher when player choice works tangibly with a good core video game.
Oh, is that a crab with a top hat and a monocle? That's where I draw the line. Come on, Master Chief. Let's get the fuck out of here.
Okay, let's get to the lot harder thing to define. And my qualifying factor for what makes a gameplay system open to player choice is how different like your playthrough would be compared to someone else's playthrough. See, if me and my buddy are playing Pong together, we're not going to get a lot of gameplay freedom because we are going to be doing the same thing. Not to say that we aren't having fun, and the fact that we are doing the same thing doesn't make it fun, but it certainly isn't as open. However, if me and my buddy are playing something like a Battlefield game and he's flying around an airplane, helicopter, or whatever, and I'm being a sneaky sniper on the hills, that's more like player choice to me because I'm actively choosing to do something different than my pal and I'm having a completely different experience. And that's what ultimately makes player and choice improve games because it ultimately makes it a more unique experience for yourself. When you did something in the game that no one else did, it makes you connect to the game a lot more. The game felt more unique to you especially, and you start to form more of a special bond with the game. And that's because you played it like no one else did. And also I want to add, it helps replayability a lot more in games. If you're playing a game that has an open combat system and on one playthrough you were sneaky ninja, stealth killing, hacking, and using silencers, that in itself was an amazing singular experience. But because it was so open, you can go back to that game and maybe you do a loud strength, shotgun, big arm, Macho Man build and have the game feel completely different and you form a whole new experience. This is a sign of great player freedom if a game can feel new even after you've beaten it. It is a great game for player freedom. And the build variety can be in like many different ways. A good example is a game like Expedition 33, which I know we've all been playing recently. This game has a bunch of different pictos and abilities and systems that allow one playthrough to be completely different than the last. And it makes the game replayable even though the story will not change at all. Side note, I want to showcase that because you have a linear story doesn't make a game bad. I think Expedition 33 is my game of the year so far, and I think it showcases, you know, you can have a linear story and still have an amazing game. But that's what makes games with stiff gameplay pretty boring. I love The Last of Us. I just completed like my 5th playthrough and I finally got that platinum, which I haven't gotten for years. But never on this earth have I heard someone say the gameplay of The Last of Us is the greatest part of it. The gameplay of the first game at least is pretty boring, and that's kind of the point. It's gritty and grimy, but while picking up stuff like bolts is monotonous, that's kind of the point because it's more trying to immerse you in the world with the gameplay. The first Last of Us is not about the gameplay, but the world and the story. The world building I've realized in my most recent playthrough is phenomenal, and the acting is just, it's great aspect on top. But all things considered, those aspects don't make me love the super boring gameplay. And I have another reason for not liking the gameplay, because I know it can be done right. because I've played The Last of Us Part 2. The Last of Us 2 took those kind of monotonous world building aspects and still made a fun game in my opinion. And it's not even because they made significant changes to the gameplay, but because of minute ones. The combat is no longer choke and cover and shoot. Ellie as a character is a lot more mobile, allowing for the gameplay to feel more unique. See, Joel is kind of like, I punch, I shoot, but over the 12 to 13 hours, that gameplay loop kind of gets really boring. However, The Last of Us 2 added more features on top of the punching and shooting, and stuff like a prone mode, and especially dodge button. Those are the big two. Dodge button makes melee combat feel a lot more alive, and just little changes. Stuff like Ellie can now jump off the roof and stab someone from above and then go prone in the grass. It just makes the gameplay feel a lot more open. Maybe you're a sneaky Ellie who hides in the tall grass, sets traps, and strikes when the time is right. Or maybe you fucking run at everybody, dodge their attacks, dive and shoot and grab and shoot. You get what I'm trying to say. Just a little more freedom opens the game up a lot more and still allows the world building to strive. So far with gameplay, I've more talked about combat kind of changing and how that affects it, but now I want to move over to something else. I want to talk about exploration freedom and my favorite kind of games right now, the blind game. These are a game where you get maybe a small tutorial and the game just says go. Maybe you've got one objective that the game wants you to solve, but it's not some Ubisoft bullshit where every little thing on the map is marked. They just say, hey, go out in the world and go find what you have to do. This builds a special connection with the game because you, as a player, choose where you want to go. Most of these games do have story events where you have to do one thing to the next, but I'm trying to say like the open world itself kind of just lets you do what you want to do. You can go explore things in whatever order you want to do. You can complete the game in whatever order you want to do. Go explore the world. Go do that thing. Go look at that place. It builds a very special relationship with that game because it feels like you, the player, conquered the world. Path wasn't fed to you. You figured out. You did your thing. You were immersed in this world because you got to choose where you wanted to go. The game didn't say, hey, go over here. Your natural interest said, hey, look at that cool thing over there, and you decided to go over there. And on top of that, usually these games are complemented with a very open combat system. So not only do you build that special connection with exploring the world with your own freedom, but you also build that special connection with how you played the game. By letting players' inherent curiosity and choice go to work, you ultimately build a much deeper bond with this game, which I know I've said a lot, but really I feel a lot more connected to a game where I feel like I was the main person in it. If you want some recommendations, I have some good ones for some blind games. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom will always be it. They're the first thing that come to my mind, and I especially love Breath of the Wild. I just remember playing that for the first time in 2017 and just being awed, and it's so fucking good. Go play those games. Elden Ring 2, those two games are two of my top 5 games ever. Elden Ring, literally just go where you want. I had 100 hours in that game. I fucking love that game. Go play that one too. If you want something a little different than that, then go play something like Outer Wilds, which is not the same as something like Elden Ring or Breath of the Wild, but it still wants you to go into the world and based on your inherent curiosity and try to solve these puzzles with your own brain. Never look up a guide for that game unless you're completely stuck, because it will be one of the most immersive games ever. And maybe just because I love this game, also New Vegas. We all know New Vegas is really good. Go play that game. It's a little different than these, but ultimately I think it still deserves to be on here. And like I've already said, most of these games are in my top 10 games of all time, so I think it really shows kind of the power this blind gameplay, explore by yourself experience can truly have. And I'm gonna stop glazing for a second because, well, I have talked so much about why player freedom is really good. I also do want to give another perspective on when it can be really, really kind of negative towards the game. We're gonna quick fire some real quick. It can sometimes lead to confusing moments in games, which you feel weren't earned. Something like Outer Wilds has amazing puzzles, but there was 1 or 2 puzzles in that game where I had to look up what I had to do, and instead of being oh, I'm so stupid, I more was that is kind of, I guess that makes sense, which is not a feeling I should have. Player freedom can also sometimes sacrifice a good story to make a fun game. Some of the most fun games I've ever played do not have good or in-depth stories, which is sometimes fine because usually the gameplay can make up for it, but it can make a game feel kind of incomplete, especially a game like Breath of the Wild. For how amazing that game is, the story, it isn't bad, but it doesn't feel befitting of a masterpiece like that game. And this one is probably the biggest flaw player freedom can give way to, and it's weapon balancing. If you, a player, are given 4,500 weapons, but 3 of them 2-shot every enemy, why would I use the other 4? What would the number be? Would I say 45? 44,997. Boom, numbers. This especially plagued games like Elden Ring, where a new update comes out and some dude on YouTube drops top 10 craziest, OPest Elden Ring videos you've ever fucking seen. And well, yeah, being a god and killing everything with OP weapons is fun and all. I'm not going to lie, I think my more fulfilling playthrough of Elden Ring was where I used an unconventional build rather than a god build. So I think that's a big flaw that the developers need to start working on more, is weapon balancing, because, you know, you can have a bazillion weapons and a lot of them are different and fun and unique, but if they don't all feel somewhat equal, it really kind of hurts the balancing, especially to casual audiences who are going to more lean towards, oh, this is the best thing, I'm gonna go do this, when you should really go out and try to do your own thing. So you may ask me, after everything we've talked about, Isaac, is there any game you consider have great story freedom and gameplay freedom? Yeah, Prey 2017 and Fallout New Vegas, and probably some more that I can't think of right now. But even games like Prey 2017, no matter how good it is, are definitely lacking in some parts. It's probably not even my favorite Arcane Studios game, and I might be stretching that definition where I say overall effects on the story for Prey 2017. There are only like 3 endings, but I don't want to spoil the game, so go play it for yourself and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's amazing, an underrated gem. It has both, and I don't think anyone can really argue with me on Fallout New Vegas. I mean, I guess the gameplay is not as open as something like Prey 2017, but I don't really care. This is my video. Fuck you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. I love you. Mwah. This is the part of the video where the video ends. It will be concluding in a short amount of time. I appreciate your viewership. The video will be concluding. Thank you. I want to preface this conclusion by saying 2 things. First, I am not a gaming expert. And second, this did not cover all my thoughts. I don't want to yap for like 2 hours about game design because it would have been more incoherent than this video already was. I just finally have some free time on my hands again to play video games, and it was on my mind. It also just inspires me to play unique, fun games. I'm done in the big year 2025 playing fucking shitty, linear, samey games. I love a unique, silly game where I actually feel like my actions matter to the game. So this is also a message just for all your goated indie devs and AA devs, because they are really carrying the industry right now, because you're usually the people who actually are willing to tackle a more creative and innovative approach to gaming rather than the AAA scene, which really seems to be dying, because I think gamers as a whole want more unique and interesting experiences, and player freedom is definitely a growing factor in that. Like I already talked about, those player choice moments really help people connect with a game more, and I think that's what we need more than anything right now. In a world full of uncreative slop, not just in gaming, but in media as a whole, it's awesome when something comes out that is unique and different, and in video games, something we can connect with, because that kind of adds to the magic of video games. Not purchasing microtransactions and all that bullshit, but being immersed, being in the game yourself. I don't know, that kind of sounds cheesy, but we live in a very uncreative world right now, and I really like that sometimes nowadays we can still just be creative. Also, sorry it's been like 9 months since I last uploaded. I was hibernating in my little turtle shell. And gambling.